Jussie Smollett is officially a free man. He has been released from jail after only a few days, just about a week, behind bars for 5 felony counts related to his hate crime hoax. I mean, when you look at the evidence, it is just so obvious this dude is guilty. His story on its face was so insane, I can't believe anyone believed it. I am of the opinion that all of these people that came out and were like, we stand with Jussie, knew he was lying the whole time, and they are pieces of human garbage. I'm just so sick of this trash. You want to talk about white privilege and race and all that stuff? How about this? Jussie Smollett is wealthy and can do whatever he wants. They let him out. This is a guy, we talked about this last night opening with Timcast IRL, and I was almost just like, I don't care to talk about this guy, but you know what I read? I read that he was refusing to eat all week. They were feeding him ice chips because he wouldn't eat anything. They restrained him. This is a dude who, when he was being sentenced, screamed he wasn't suicidal. Why? Because he is a psychopath. He is a psychotic individual. He has no remorse, no emotions. He is a man of pure selfishness and ego. Man, I want to say this guy is evil incarnate, but it sounds like I'm giving him too much credit because it's not like he's all that, demonic or powerful. He's powerful enough to get out of jail pending appeal. So maybe he'll go back, but I'm just sick of this system. I'm reading this story. All right. Now we'll talk about Jussie Smollett and his narcissistic ego and evil and really how it embodies so much of the modern American city urban liberal type personalities, that the main character syndrome. I was seeing this story and I was like, I don't want to talk about this guy. But then I saw this totally brutal video. A horrifying video shows the final moments of an LA DUI suspect who died screaming, "I can't breathe," after being pinned to the ground face down for refusing to give a blood sample over a fear of needles. Whoa, slow down. Look, I hear a story about a guy resisting cops, and then they pin him down. He says, "I can't breathe." And I'm like, all right, let's take a look at this. Nobody should die in these situations. This is a guy, white dude. Well, I don't know. He's a bit swarthy, so I'm not entirely sure what his background is, but he's Bronstein. And he was on suspicion of a DUI arrested. The police were trying to forcibly take his blood. Okay, I got a problem with that. Right away, I'm like, okay, not a fan of forcibly taking someone's blood. They pinned him down. Several cops leaned on his back while he screamed, and they told him to, be quiet. And he said he would give the blood willingly, but they said too late. And then he died. Much like George Floyd did. They say he died because he had meth in his system. Acute meth intoxication. George Floyd had meth. He was chewing on a speedball. What do we get out of that? Well, there were 2 different reports. One was that the pressure on his back, is what did it. This guy died 2 months before George Floyd, and it was not national news. It was not a big story. Now, truth be told, people filmed the George Floyd incident, and that video went public right away. This video, we have body camera footage. But when I was seeing this story, and I'm just thinking about the psychotic lies about white privilege and critical race theory and all that stuff, I'm just so sick of the lies. Psychopaths, sociopaths, you want to live in this world where the billionaires, where the political elites can crush your neck under their boot? Go live there. I don't care. They come out and they say, oh, it's all about race. No, it isn't. It's about power. The truth be told, the left totally understands. They live by this ethos, not every single one, but many of them, that there is no truth but power. The fascistic tenet that if you have the power, you can exert it and you can do what you want. And you know what? It's not entirely wrong, at least from a factual stance. Maybe from a moral position, it's wrong. But the truth is, power is the only thing that people recognize. We had Ryan Long on Timcast IRL on my birthday, just this last week. And he was talking about how Blink Fitness was demanding he pay them money. And he was telling them, I don't owe you this money. I wanted to cancel my account years ago, and they were filing on his credit or whatever. And so, on the show, Danny, who works with Ryan, Danny Polistruck, said, have you taken care of it? And Ryan, semi-jokingly, was like, I'm taking care of it right now on the Timcast IRL podcast because the show goes out to around like 1 million people across the board. I think we get, full disclosure. Obviously on YouTube, you can see the views like 500,000. But then we also have the podcast version, which is like 100K, and then the clips. So, and then live viewership is actually, high as well. Blink Fitness emailed him the next day, and they were like, "We're so sorry this happened to you. We're so sorry." What was that? You wielded your fist in a way that scared us. That's all it is. Jussie Smollett is a deeply evil individual. He is an example of the corruption plaguing our country. And so is the story about the dude who died. I didn't want I don't like it that George Floyd died. Absolutely not. And I said it the entire time. I mean, at some point you got to get off a person, right? But the media lies about everything. People in this country are zombies carrying pitchforks. Here's the news. Let's read about Jussie Smollett, and I'll talk to you about this deeply narcissistic, psychotic individual who represents so much of the modern millennial, zennial. He's a little bit older. He's an older millennial. 6:41 p.m. Smollett is officially out of jail. Following the decision earlier today by an Illinois appellate court to cut short the former Empire star's 150-day sentence, pending appeal, Smollett walked out of Cook County Jail around 8 p.m. local time. Surrounded by members of his defense team, family, and other supporters, Smollett was silent as he exited the Chicago facility. Defense attorney Nenye Uch told the assembled media that his client only drank water over the past 6 days and ate no food whatsoever. Here's a guy who staged a hoax hate crime against half the country. I mean, against the entire country, to be honest. The story was so absolutely insane. Everybody knows it at this point. At 2 a.m, he went to go get eggs and then ended up Subway instead because Walgreens was closed. And then 2 white Trump supporters in MAGA hats who just happened to recognize him from Empire, and with their, MAGA hats and bleach and noose, just happened to have all that stuff. What a coincidence. Talk about the stupidest thing you've ever heard. 2 guys just happened to be walking around with bleach and a rope from a hardware store, saw Jussie Smollett walk by himself in an uninhabited area of Chicago, for the most part uninhabited. It's like not a particularly densely populated area. No one's ever out in this area of Chicago at night. And they saw him, and it's just so insane. But what really got me was the fact that he was refusing to eat. That he stood up at sentencing and said, "I am not suicidal. I am not." It's like, okay, we get it, dude. You're going to kill yourself and then try and make it look like a conspiracy. This guy is so deeply narcissistic that he would plague our society with these lies and manipulations. And you know what, man? We did talk about this last night. He's going to get rehired, isn't he? Hollywood's going to give him another job. He is going to get rehired, isn't he? The Daily Mail, man. It's basically the same story I just read from Deadline. But what was really interesting to me was how they talked about how he was only eating ice chips or whatever. But there is something interesting here. The way his lawyers are framing it. Check it out. Uch claims Smollett was treated harshly because of his race. Should black men be walked into jail with a class 4 felony? Shame on you if you think so. What? What do you mean? You committed a felony, bro. Multiple charges. You should go to jail? What? The judge spent a great deal of time chastising, berating my client. I've never seen that before. I'm not happy with it. Another member of Smollett's legal team condemned the draconian sentence and echoed Uch's claim Smollett was tried twice for the same offense. Help every citizen in Chicago realize how important this case is because it could be you. You should never, ever be tried again for a second time. Oh, man. That's what they're saying, right? That's the narrative. Let me explain. They say, on April 12th, 2019, this is over at Wikipedia, the city of Chicago filed a lawsuit. Let's go back. On February 20th, 2019, Smollett was charged by a grand jury with a class 4 felony for filing a false report. The next day, surrendered himself. Shortly thereafter, CPD spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said he's under arrest in the custody of detectives. On March 26, all charges filed were dropped, with Judge Stephen Watkins ordering the public court file sealed. First Assistant State's Attorney Joseph Magatz said the office reached a deal with Smollett's defense team in which prosecutors dropped the charges upon Smollett performing 16 hours of community service and forfeiting his $10,000 bond. New charges were brought about. There is a point here. They say after the charges were dropped, allegations of favoritism and leniency were made against prosecutor Kim Fox. In June 2019, Fox asked the state to conduct an independent inquiry. In February of 2020, after a further investigation, Smollett was indicted again. On June 12th, a judge rejected his claim that his February charge violated the principle of double jeopardy. His trial began in November of 2021, and he was found guilty on 5 of 6 counts. It's not wrong. It's true. You see, the problem is Kim Foxx is deeply corrupt. Chicago is one of the most corrupt places in the country. It's why I don't want to live there anymore. I've had cops try planting drugs in my car in the suburbs of Chicago. During our coverage of the No NATO protest, I believe this was in 2012, me, Luke Rudkowski, and several of our friends were surrounded by a bunch of Chicago cops at gunpoint as they went through our vehicle and found nothing. They later tried planting drugs in our car using what I can only assume to have been an informant. It's a long story. But, we had someone trying to put drugs in our car, to put it simply. And I'm not an idiot. And so I told them to screw off. And we had people telling us that they were talking about our vehicle later that night on the scanner. We got out of the city. I grew up there. I know the stories of the cops. The cop who grabbed the meter maid and slammed her up against a wall by the throat because she gave him a ticket for illegally parking because he did. The story about the bartender, who was brutally beaten by a bunch of off-duty cops, because that's Chicago. That's what Chicago is. Chicago has black sites. These the CPD. These are areas where they're not officially known. They bring suspects to beat and torture or detain off the books. There's the famous story of that guy who was, what was his name? He was electrocuting people to force confessions. That's Chicago. Kim Foxx is just another piece of the deeply corrupt city. Chicago is corrupt. And you know where it all started? It really did start with Prohibition, but Chicago's just been corrupt forever. One of the problems is a complacent population of zombies who keep voting in these people. But truth be told, you have criminals who use their criminal power to do criminal things. And thus you get Jussie Smollett, whatever his intentions were, to make it seem like Trump supporters were evil. I don't know. To boost his career, to make more money. He gets away with it. And then what happens? Special inquiry happens, and they're like, no. But the funny thing is, it was the cops who were like, no. So it's funny. Seeing corruption versus corruption. I despise the city. Absolutely. I've met some good cops in Chicago. I tell the story how I was saved from a potential mugging by some cops who had been stalking this guy, and it's one of the first times I've ever had a cop actually stop a crime in progress. Truth be told, there was nothing for the guy to mug because I was broke, but it is what it is. Just a corrupt city, man. And Jussie Smollett is a corrupt guy. I can't show you too much of this article on this guy who was killed by cops in LA. Different city, I know, but still part of the United States. Because it's too brutal. Because YouTube probably would be like, yo, you can't show a guy being, killed. The point of this story, let me read the headline. Horrifying video shows final moments of LA DUI suspect who died screaming, "I can't breathe," after being pinned to the ground face down for refusing to give blood sample over fear of needles. He died March 31st, 2020 in Pasadena, less than 2 months before George Floyd died in Minneapolis. Footage of his final moments was released by LA cops on Wednesday after his family sued to see the harrowing video. So that's an important factor here. There was no video of this. With George Floyd, there was. He was pulled over for suspicion of drunk driving, and police were forcing him to give blood for a sobriety test. His family sued for excessive use of force in violation of his civil rights. Video shows Bronstein being forced onto the mat in the police station's garage while handcuffed. Then 5 officers kneel on his back as they extract blood. He screams, "I can't breathe," 11 times before he falls silent. They eventually released videotape, but they fought to release the tape, but a federal judge ordered them to do so. Criminal justice experts say the tape shows a callous disregard for human life. They want to take his blood, man. Now, look, I guess what they're saying is that the dude had meth in his system. Let me see. Here we go. The LA County Coroner's Office ruled Bronstein's cause of death as acute methamphetamine intoxication during restraint by law enforcement. A copy of the autopsy report was not immediately available. You think there's going to be riots over this guy? I don't. I understand why there weren't riots at the time. Again, with George Floyd, people were filming it. But I want to talk about his cause of death. With George Floyd, his cause of death was The police kneeled on his neck and it cut off circulation of the brain or whatever, even though he was chewing a speedball. The LA County says this guy died from acute methamphetamine intoxication during restraint by law enforcement. Maybe. The challenge is for either of these guys, they were behind the wheel of a vehicle and doing some serious drugs. Can't have that. I can't blame the cops for being like, yo, we don't want you behind the wheel of a vehicle. My issue here is not so much with the police trying to stop someone who's doing drugs. The issue I take is the idea of privilege, white privilege. It's a lie. Now, let me explain. There is, in essence, some truth to the idea of white privilege. Absolutely. And I understand what people are trying to say when they do. But as I've often explained, there's majority privilege. If you go into a country where most people are of a certain race, yeah, they're going to treat you very, very differently. I know, I've experienced it. Granted, white people around the world still are typically viewed in a somewhat favorable light for some reasons. And this tends to do with power. That's really what it's about. Privilege is just another idea for power. Can you give me power? Can you do things for me? And if you can, we can accommodate you. I think it's funny. I've experienced it all my life. Go into a fancy restaurant. Let me tell you. We went to eat at this very nice place for breakfast, and they bring us out fresh sweet potato muffins. They're basically cupcakes, man. Wow. A little sugar sprinkled on top. And they said, oh, we can get you more, no problem. And I'm just fascinating. These dense, enriched products, food products. Sweet potato muffin. I mean, you got your vitamins in there, you get your sugars, you get some grains. It's not like it's a nutritious meal or anything, but it's better than eating scraps off the ground. If you're poor, you go to a restaurant, you go to a local diner, you get a free bread basket. No, not at your average working class diner, but I assure you, my friends, you go to a steakhouse, they are lavishing you with free stuff. It's funny. I'm rather perturbed at the. I learned the hard way a rule about casinos because I talk about going to the casino, hang out, and with my friends, and I was playing craps, and this guy throws the dice, and one of the dice lands perfectly 90 degrees upright. No kidding. It landed leaning against the puck, which is the thing that says on or off. I'm not going to explain the rules of craps. You get it. They throw dice. And I got upset. And I got upset because you could not clearly discern what the number was. And so they moved the thing out of the way, causing the dice to fall into a losing position, and they took my money from me. And I said, "What? How do you have the right to manipulate the board?" Well, so I got pissed off. And I said, I hope it was worth it for you guys because I'm never coming back. I got a letter in the mail. Free money. I got a letter in the mail. Maybe it's not related, but I smashed my player's card. I said, this is absurd because apparently the rules in craps that however the die would have landed is how they call it. But in this instance, I was like, no way. It was ambiguous. They had to move something out of the way to actually say they didn't call it. And it was only after they moved it, I said, you can't do that. That should have been called no roll. I don't think the House should be able to do that. Anyway, I digress, right? Here's the issue. They know who I am. I'm not like one of their top tier players or anything like that, but, I hang out there all the time. And so when I say I'm never coming back and then get a letter in the mail that says, you've won. That's what it said. And it said, make sure you come in and open this because if you open it, outside, you don't win, right? So what you have to do is give me this card and you have a pull tab. And so they were like, you got to bring it to us. It's like, oh, okay. I just think it's funny that I told them I'm never coming back ever again because of this BS. And then I win. And what did I win? $1,000. No joke. $1,000 free bet, mind you. It's something different. Because I mean it when I say I'm not coming back if you want to play stupid games. I mean, I'm a man of my word. So I get this thing in the mail and I rip it open. And it says free $1,000 bet. They wanted me to come back because they missed something from me. And that's the name of the game. Power. If you're a poor person, if you're lower, income and you go to a casino and you have very little money, they will spit in your face. I've seen it happen where, typically at casinos, if there's an error on the side of the house, they try and make sure they just give it to the players because it's like, it's worth it. But sometimes they don't actually answer. They don't actually respond unless you can do something. right? So I'm telling the casino story just because it's like, it's been on my mind. But the reality is, you take a look at any kind of problem you'll have with a corporation. I see people tweeting all the time at big businesses, and I think about what kind of world we're living in and how sick and twisted it is. You guys watching, let's say you go to, you order a big thing, a big catering thing, or, sandwiches from McDonald's, and that you get screwed over. The meal's all wrong. They could be like, we're not going to do anything for you. Typically they will, but they could be like, no, get out of here. Then you go on Twitter and you tweet about it if you got the followers, and all of a sudden they're begging for your forgiveness. Like Blink Fitness and Ryan Long. You know what, man? I got to be honest. I don't want to use any service or provide any resources to a company that would do that. I should not have to tweet to 1 million people about a problem to get it solved. But boy, does it work. It's a disgusting way to live. If you are a regular person, average person, I should say, and you are wronged by a corporation, they should do their best to take care of you, to accommodate you. I mean, within reason, I don't know, they're scammers for sure. But here's how the game is played. You post a tweet, and then all of a sudden they're begging for forgiveness. It's sickening. And this is what we see basically with people like Jussie Smollett. That when these people come out and they're like, privilege this, privilege that, all these companies really care about is, can you go after their bottom line? And you know what the problem is? People on the right, whatever, the libertarian faction, civil libertarians, they don't do this. The left, cancel culture, it's their bread and butter. They will gleefully march in a mob and attack and destroy a business. How many people have been wrongly accused? How many businesses falsely identified? How many individuals? With the January 6th stuff, there were people who were like falsely accused as a firefighter, and they were like, look, it's him, and it wasn't. They go on Yelp. They destroy your company's ratings to make sure that nobody ever wants to go there, because that's what people recognize. And so I'll tell you this. Even on the right, cancel culture exists because people have their lines, their limits. But for businesses, they don't care about politics. What they care about is their phone is ringing off the hook and they're receiving threats. So when I was putting on a speaking engagement in the Philadelphia area, Pitman, New Jersey, the local theater in Pitman, at the last minute, received threats. And so they canceled on us, violating the contract. We said, you can't do this to us. We've spent money on this. They said, too bad, sue us. And we could have, but that could take a year or two. For what? We moved the event. We were only able to secure a venue with half the capacity, so we ended up losing a ton of money. And that's the name of the game. They don't care about us, because the issue is Antifa was willing to use threats of burning down the theater. Well, we won't do that. We say we'll make it legal, and the guy's mentality is, I'm between a rock and a hard place. A lawsuit is going to cost me 10 grand, or some crazy psychotic Antifa burning the theater down. Yeah. They know which side they're willing to support, because which side costs more damage. That's the name of the game. That's the game Jussie Smollett plays. He's going to make it as painful as possible for everybody, and they're going to give him what he wants. We've got corruption problems in these countries. In this country. Well, these countries too. Canada, the UK. They come out and they say white privilege, and then you watch what happens to Jussie Smollett. You look at these stories and you ask yourself, why is it that these people get what they want? Because they're violent psychopaths, and it scares people, so they give in. It's terrifying, isn't it? I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.